So for tonight, we have a few questions because a few of you brought up some really great questions and topics. So the basic topics that we have, one topic has to do with what's called the Five Remembrances. This is a teaching from the Pali collection. The second topic has to do with differences between Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada, and that there may be some different criticisms between these two traditions, or generally two traditions, the Theravada and the various forms of Mahayana Buddhism. But before we just jump into the topics, I wanted to remind everyone that we'll talk about a lot of theory in this group. We'll talk about theory about Buddhism, which includes theory about the practice, meaning how to practice discipline or precepts, meditation, and wisdom. But we'll also talk about theory, which may go beyond that, theory covering the whole view of Buddhism's universal view, kind of the view of the cosmos according to Buddhism. But regardless of what the theory is, it's important for us to remember that all of this, all of the Buddha's teaching, we can look at it like medicine. Like we only take medicine when we're sick, right? Usually, unless we just want to get high, but that could be a problem. Look at it as medicine that we take when we're sick, and that it's only useful when we're sick. If we take medicine when we're not sick, we can get sick. We make ourselves sick. So if we look at the Buddha's teachings like medicine, it's much easier to not look at it like doctrine, because religion, all religions have their doctrine, and Buddhism has its form of doctrine. Different schools have established what is the Buddha's teaching, what is the nature of the universe, etc. But it's all medicine. So if you found yourself, the more you study Buddhism, the more you're getting into this, that the more sick you feel, or if you feel like you have a headache after studying some of these things, and it's too much, or it's very heavy, or it seems not applicable, maybe that's not the medicine you need. So maybe you don't need to study that part at the moment. Maybe it's not useful for you. So you just don't need to take that medicine. So it's important to remember that. I, we're not here to indoctrinate each other. We're not here to convince each other what is right about the universe. It's all medicine. It's all just a tool. And it was described in other places that the teachings of the Buddha are like just something to remove obstructions. Like say if we had obstructions in our eye, or we had some sort of obstruction with our ability to see clearly. Buddhism is like a tool that can help take that obstruction out of our eye, whether it's dirt or dust, or maybe it's even a cataract that prevents us from seeing. Buddhism or Buddha Dharma helps to remove that obstruction so that we can see and so that we could function better. Because I think most of us are here to be happier, to be more at peace, and to function better in our life. Is that fair? I don't think we're here to become scholars or to become debaters and debate people about the nature of reality. And there are two obstructions. Buddhism talks about these obstructions as two forms. One is the obstruction of knowledge. The other is the obstruction of afflictions. The Chinese is 所知障 and 烦恼障。所知就是所知道的障碍，然后烦恼的障碍 which means any of the views that we have about ourselves, about the world, we can become obstructed by them. Certain views or any view that we cling to becomes an obstruction. And afflictions just refers to emotional attachments. So the things we like or the things we love, we tend to think about so much it becomes an obstruction. Or the things we hate, the things we dislike, also tend to become an obstacle because we're obsessing over them, thinking about them constantly. So Buddha Dharma helps to remove this attachment to views and to our emotional fixation. So with that reminder, let's begin with the topic on the five remembrances. This is also a very foundational teaching. But these remembrances, if we look at it in the spirit of what I just mentioned, if we look at the Buddha's teachings like an antidote, these five remembrances are an antidote to the way that we usually look at the world and ourselves that causes a lot of trouble. So what are they an antidote to? Well, if you want to find the original teaching where this came from, the sutra, this comes from the numerical discourses of the Buddha. And there's a great translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And this is the chapter 57. It's called Themes, or it's sometimes just translated as subjects of recollection. I'm the nature to grow old. There's no way to escape growing old. I'm of the nature to have ill health. There's no way to escape ill health. I'm of the nature to die. There's no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. And the fifth one here is my actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground on which I stand. We can go into this a little bit more just so that everybody has a context for it and we can all understand, where this teaching came from. And it's true, the fifth one does have to do with karma, or just cause and effect, the cause and effect of our actions. So, as you can see, the whole theme of this section on what's called themes is impermanence. All four of those really just express impermanence in a different way. And the second major theme is karma, or cause and consequence. Chinese is 业 or 因果. And whether it's in the East or the West, there's a lot of misunderstanding of karma or cause and effect. And there's also just different traditions of spiritual practice that use this term. This term wasn't invented by the Buddha. This term was already present within Indian teachings long before the Buddha. And I think even in Western philosophical traditions, there is the clear acknowledgement of our behavior and its consequences. But Buddhism has a certain presentation of it. So, has anyone read the source of this? Has anyone read the sutra? No, huh? Okay. When you get a chance, you can take a look. I'll just summarize it because it's not very long, but the basic message is that this teaching was given as an antidote. These five remembrances are an antidote to a way of thinking or a way of perceiving that leads to a lot of suffering and a lot of uh, troublesome behavior, or um, foolish behavior, or unwise behavior. So, for example, to be more concrete, the sutra says that because we're usually, and I'll quote it, it says, we're usually intoxicated by youth or our youthfulness, that we do foolish things, we do unwise things. intoxicated with our youth. It doesn't say too much about the detail, but what comes to mind when I say that? We're usually intoxicated with our youthfulness, and then we end up doing some pretty troublesome actions. What could that be? It's a heavy word, but I think it's safe to say at one point in time or another, we were or are intoxicated with our youth. I'm sure we've all done something really stupid because either we thought we're so young we could just do whatever, or in some way we're obsessed with our youth. Most of us don't want to age or don't want to lose our youthfulness, but it's inevitable. So we try to do something to prevent it. And not that it's bad to do something like that. Uh, there's no judgment for someone who does makes a change to their physical appearance. Buddhism doesn't have any moral judgment about what's right or wrong in terms of what you do to your appearance, but that the attitude of resisting aging and wanting to be youthful is suffering. That itself, wanting to maintain youth and being obsessed with how we look, is it good? Is it, are we beautiful or not? That itself is suffering. And we may do things that are actually harmful. Like you said, some of these surgeries, or maybe surgery to a certain point, the doctor says, hey, listen, if you do another surgery, you're at risk for infection or even dying if this doesn't go well. And we're like, oh, forget it. I'll go through with it, and risk harming ourselves. Or let's say because of wanting to prevent our aging, we then spend money that shouldn't be spent, or even steal money that's not ours. And this is starting to become more clear that because of our intoxication with youthfulness or strong attachment to it, that we may do anything to try to maintain it, harming ourselves or harming others. And that mindset itself is very painful, you know? Even if we do all the surgeries in the world and we look pretty good, are any of those results going to last indefinitely? So I think we all get the point of the first one, right? Okay, the second one. Um, the second remembrance is the antidote to being intoxicated with health. So I am of the nature to have ill health. It doesn't mean we're all going to be sick or we're all sick all the time. Then again, I guess it depends on how we look at it. But that I think it's safe to say most of us don't want to get sick, or if we're sick already, we don't want to get sicker. And that if we do have health and we feel very good, maybe we're obsessed with that. Maybe we're obsessed with the condition of our health and feeling good and looking good. This is not only looking good, but this health refers more to the condition of our body, being the well-being of our body. What comes to mind when you hear that? How could we be intoxicated with health? So it sounds like the intoxication may have been more with performance, wanting to have perfect rhythm, right? Wanting to somehow insert that rhythm into your body. It actually turned out to create a kind of illness. That's an interesting example. I didn't think of that right off the bat. Performance, but that's part of health, being able to perform at a peak level. And the fact that when we age or if there's some illness, we're just not able to perform in that way, right? I mean, I'm sure if you had a cough or if you had breathing issues, it'd be more difficult to play a woodwind instrument, right? Right. And I think if you folks pay attention to fitness or you're trying to keep your body healthy, which is good, Buddhism doesn't say to just not care about our health. Especially Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes that our body is a tool for practice and it's a tool for helping other people as well. So why not take care of it? But that, the fitness industry can show images and concepts or give a person an impression that health is somehow maintainable. If you just work out this many times per week or you use this certain program, you could look like this, or you could be like this for at least 10, 20 years, and you can maintain your gains, or you can maintain your well-being and strength. So actually, in the fitness industry, steroids has become very popular again. So a lot of people, including young people, teenagers, are taking steroids to get jacked, to get big and muscular, men and women. And also in medicine, there are drugs that can help us lose weight, which are very useful when we have certain ailments or illnesses, or that, we've tried it for many years and we've had a lot of difficulty and we're at danger of becoming very ill unless we lose weight quickly. These drugs can be useful. But at the same time, a person who wants just to get quick results and who wants to maybe avoid some sort of hard work, that these weight loss medications are being given out very readily. And there are consequences to that. We're just not sure of them. We're not sure of the long-term consequence of these drugs. But we are sure of the consequence of people who use these drugs, whether to build muscle or to lose weight, the attitude of getting fast results is also painful, isn't it? Craving fast results and craving somehow a maintenance of our physical well-being is just painful because it's inevitable that we get sick. It's inevitable that we lose our gains, so to speak. Our body will weaken. So this remembrance is the antidote to that kind of attitude, an unrealistic attitude towards health and illness. The third remembrance is I am of the nature to die. There's no way to escape death. And maybe this one hits home for us. If we've recently experienced the loss of a loved one, or if we ourselves feel that we're closer to death, whether it's due to age or physical condition, our health. What do you think it means when the sutra says that we're intoxicated with life? What could that mean? Does it mean we just want to enjoy life so much? I mean, it kind of seems like it almost sounds good to be intoxicated with life. I love life so much. Just full of joy for life. Isn't that good? This part, it actually doesn't mean that a person is just enjoying life, but that intoxication with life is an attitude where we're just avoiding death, avoiding the reality of death. And that maybe we do things to somehow try to forget about it. Maybe we do some things to enjoy life, not just to enjoy what we have, but to escape the thought of death. I don't know. Maybe we start thinking about death and then we convince ourselves, oh, don't worry about it. I got plenty of time. And we go and do something wild or we do something stimulating or exciting. And we go skydiving. I'm not afraid of death. And we jump out of a plane. Wow, this is amazing. I've never done it. It kind of looks fun. And there's nothing wrong with skydiving. But this part is talking about the attitude of craving life and just being afraid of death, trying to avoid death or the thought of death at all costs. And the common phrase that's used in Mahayana Buddhism is 贪生怕死, which is just craving life and fearing death. It's kind of like we're all happy when a new baby is born, but when someone dies, it's really difficult. It's really sad. It's very, very hard. Or even if a pet, loss of one of our pets, it can be really hard. And some people, when they lose one pet, they may very quickly just go and get another pet to try to replace that. Or if we lose someone in our life, maybe we try and find something to distract ourselves because it is painful. And so we try to find something else to just fill our mind with because it's so painful to face the grief when someone passes. This is a remembrance about our own mortality, but it also connects with the fourth one, which is not wanting to part with people that we love. The practice, this recollection, is the antidote to fearing death and avoiding death, just reminding us that it's inevitable, which doesn't mean that it's like we 找死. It's not like we go looking for death or we do things that are really risky because we don't care about life. It comes from my skateboarding culture when I was younger, but there was a sticker that just says no fear. I think it says no fear. And it's connected with doing things risky when you skateboard. But eventually it became popular in other extreme sports, like, mountain biking on these trails that you could die if you fall, right? Or what's the other super extreme sport where you could die like any moment? Parkour. Have you seen that? People just like jumping from one building to the next. It's called parkour, and it's for fun. It's for the high of, doing this amazing acrobatic when you could die if you mess up. So it's not of course, it's not the purpose to be able to seek thrills without fear of death, but it's more of an acceptance of our eventual mortality. So it removes the fear of trying to avoid death. Again, it's a recollection of our nature. Even if we're the most careful person, the most healthy person, the most well-behaved person, death could come at any time. That's why we talked about in the last session, I think it was the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness in the Theravada tradition. Sometimes they have the skeleton hanging in the monastery, right? That's the reflection or the recollection on mortality. In Mahayana monasteries, they don't have that tradition. There were many masters who would just write the character for death and put it in a place where they would always see it. I think it was Yin Guang Dashi would put the character 死 and he pasted it in his room. So every day he saw it. And at first that may seem kind of morbid. It's like, geez, what are these people just like thinking about death all the time? Is that what Buddhism is about? Like, don't enjoy life, don't have fun, but just think about how morbid everything is and we're all gonna die? Definitely not. And that's why, we could talk in a little bit about the antidote to these five antidotes. Because if we use these five recollections unskillfully, we could become morbid. We could become depressed. So for the people who think they can avoid death, or for the people who fear death, this is just a reminder, an antidote to that. And the fourth, um, death or separation with people that we love or that we're close to, that's also inevitable. So, of course, if someone that's close to us passes away, it doesn't mean that we could just reflect on this and feel fine. Like, oh, right, everyone's going to die anyway, and then I'm okay. I'm not going to grieve anymore. That's not the expectation of the five recollections. But that for some people, in some situations, when they're grieving, they're resisting the fact that that person has passed. Whether it's because maybe they're regretting something they did, that, well, if I didn't do this, this person wouldn't have died. I know someone who almost blames her mother's death on herself because she's a doctor and the hospital that her mother was in overlooked something. The hospital didn't see that the mother had a brain bleed, and then the mother passed away very quickly. The daughter was, who's a doctor, really blamed herself for not having the hospital check and do a thorough check. So she, resisted her mother's death for a long time, and she felt very, very remorseful and in a lot of pain. I think that thinking that if I just would have done something, she could still be here. This recollection and also the reminder that we can't control everything. Things are not under our control can help relieve some of this heavier grief. It can help relieve the resistance to death. But one thing that these recollections likely won't do is it won't just eliminate the grieving process because we're definitely going to miss the people we love, right? So just by having this brief recollection, we're not going to feel fine, and we may feel not fine for many months. Now, the grieving process can be many months, can be a year, or it can be years. But um, this is where the practice, the method really comes in with the grieving process. The method of being aware of when we start to obsessively think of the person and wishing that they were with us, that we can recognize that as painful. Wanting someone to be here when they're not here is creating a lot of pain. So when we use the method, we can see, we can catch ourselves in the moment um, with this obsessive, in a way, intoxicating yearning or longing for our loved one. And we could return to the method and gradually let go of of that yearning. But there are other methods too, like gratitude, where we can reflect on how that person impacted us in ways which benefited our whole life and continue to benefit us. That even though mom is not here, the things that she did, taught me so much. And I remember often the things that she said. My mother is still here, but maybe it's your mother, father, or someone else, but that their influence is still here. And if we recollect their influence and have a sense of gratitude for that positive influence or wholesome influence, it can relieve the pain of the grieving and help us remember that, there's so much joy that that person brought to us that still actually exists. The fact that we still remember what they said and it can encourage us and help us make good decisions, we'll never forget that. That's the person living on inside of us. My father is still here, but he almost left 3 or 4 times because of his heart condition. It's a miracle what science did to his heart, but he was almost gone a few times. Even though he's not passed, I still remember things that he said years ago. I remember he said one thing like, um, whenever you borrow something from someone, return it to them in a condition that was better than when you got it. And I never forgot that. Whenever I borrow something, I'm about to return it, I check it, I clean it, make it look nice, and then give it back. Things like that live on in us. So reflecting on gratitude for the person can also be a way to um, relieve our grief. And that's relieving the obstruction of affliction, the 烦恼障. We need to rely on practice and a method. These five recollections are more of removing the obstruction of knowledge, the 所知障. When we believe that death is avoidable, when we believe that health could be eternal, when we try to believe that youth can be eternal, that's an obstruction of a view, obstruction of knowledge. So these recollections help to adjust the view so that we see ourself, our life, our mortality in a realistic way. So it's medicine. It's not a doctrine, but it's to relieve the intoxication with youth, health, life, and togetherness. So the fifth recollection follows that. It's a reminder of our behavior and how there's consequences. So that if based on intoxication with these aspects of our life, we do things that cause trouble, or we do things that um, maybe we don't think will cause too much trouble. We know they're bad, we know they're harmful, but we think, it's not too bad. It's no big deal. I'll just steal a little bit of money so that I can get this machine to make my skin look good. It's just a little bit of money. They won't even miss it. They won't know it's gone. So I'll just take it. We buy this machine. Nobody will know. Or to somehow escape death, or to convince people that death is avoidable, people lie. We know that there are people in businesses trying to sell products to people who get tricked by their belief that this product will keep you youthful or can cure an illness. And a friend of mine got scammed by spending thousands of dollars on a treatment that promised to cure his disease. Did it cure it? Definitely not. And we found out later that it was a total scam. And that group of people was arrested and imprisoned. Of course, we're probably not going to become scammers and do things like that, but maybe it's just a little lie. Maybe it's a little harm, and we think, oh, it's no big deal. This fifth recollection reminds us that no matter what the action, if it's done with this ill intention, there's always going to be a consequence that's inescapable. And you can't hide from it. Even if nobody finds out for your lifetime, your relatives may have to suffer because of the decision. Or even if nobody finds out in our lifetime, in our relatives' lifetime, but at least in this life, whenever we've done something based on intoxication with these things, based on craving or aversion, that we suffer because of it. If we act on it, we're going to suffer more. So the Buddha reminds us that the consequences of our actions will always follow us, whether people know about it or not. We will experience the consequence. There's a story in the news now of famous musicians or producers, like these moguls who for years lived lavish lives and had a lot of parties and what seemed like just they had relationships with people. They were promiscuous or had sex with a lot of people because they were rich and people were attracted to them. But we find out years later that, some of these moguls were abusing people and even raping people, harassing people. But for years, nobody knew, right? But after the Me Too movement, people became confident enough to bring up these things. And now those moguls are really suffering, and all of the consequences seem to be coming out at one time, and they end up in prison for life. So again, we're probably not going to do what they did, but even though something seems hidden from everyone or that we've escaped it, we can escape the consequence. Sooner or later, the conditions ripen and the consequences result. These five recollections, reminding us of impermanence and reminding us not to act foolishly based on a view of permanence, instead of fighting and resisting and then doing things that lead to intoxication of all kinds. To point out that our usual view brings suffering. Our usual view that somehow we can maintain our health, not get sick, avoid death, or at least not think about it, and then try to keep people close to us forever is delusion and leads to so much trouble. So it's a reminder of impermanence in all these different respects. It's mostly related to our body and to relationships. But some people, when they hear this, they feel upset and they may even feel that, geez, Buddhism is like super depressing. And I knew this one guy who he said, yeah, the more I study Buddhism, like the more depressed I feel because like everything is just impermanent. I just got this new job. We just got a new house. My son won this award for his amazing performance, but everything is impermanent. And he was like, man, he's like, Buddhism was right, but I'm so depressed. He's like, I really feel depressed. And he said, I really don't feel motivated to do too much because why? If I work so hard, if I spend half my life training myself to be a master of something, and then I get all these awards, I do all this stuff, but it's all like sand slipping through my fingers. Why do it? How depressing. But that's why it's important to know that these teachings are what's called the relative truth, and they're antidotes. They're the relative truth because it's reminding us that with birth, there's death. With health, there's illness. With togetherness, there's separation. But that Mahayana Buddhism goes a step further beyond these teachings and recollections to remind us that impermanence, and Mahayana Buddhism uses the word emptiness more. So it kind of combines impermanence and selflessness into one word, emptiness. Everything is empty of permanence. Everything is empty of self. And everything we have is constantly changing, like dew on a blade of grass. Remember that from the Diamond Sutra? 如露亦如电. It's like dew on the blade of grass. It's there, but then it just evaporates once the sun comes up. And lightning, which just flashes. As soon as it flashes, it's gone. Emptiness actually reminds us that true emptiness is actually wonderful. That life is wonderful because things are empty. Because everything is constantly changing, life can be. Like because of impermanence, a child can grow up to be this influential person and benefit mankind, humankind, right? Or because of impermanence, we can actually learn something or unlearn something that's not helpful. And that without death, we wouldn't have any life, right? Jiteng Fasha was giving a talk once and he said, you know, if we didn't like make space for other people by dying, then there wouldn't be enough space for anybody else to enjoy this planet. If none of us died, this would be a very busy and crowded place and it would not be enjoyable. So he said, we should be willing to make space for more people. Not only that, but you know, death in a way is nutrition for life. People who farm, doing farming and gardening, compost the nastiest, stinkiest stuff left over from trash becomes what? Like, yeah, food for flowers, food for our veggies. The death of the previous plants is now the life of the new plants. So in Mahayana, there's no birth and there's no death. It goes beyond these contemplations to say that don't get sad or depressed about death. Death is just a word, it's just an idea. True life or true reality is just transformation. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh says, continuation. There's no death, it's just continuation in different forms. He often says the cloud becomes the rain, becomes your tea, or a person when they pass. They not only make space for other people, but their impact on the rest of the world is undeniable and continues. So because of time, I'd like to just transition to the next set of questions, which is actually based on this question related to emptiness that someone asked a Theravada monk once to teach emptiness. And the monk's response was that emptiness is what all Buddhists strive for to realize Buddhahood. But I don't think, he said, I don't think most people, even most Buddhists, are ready to learn or experience emptiness before they've practiced loving kindness, generosity, and discipline. He said he's seen a lot of Buddhists who talk about emptiness, but in their daily life, they lack the basic compassion. So that's like teaching a kindergartner calculus. So he says he recommends everyone start with loving kindness, giving, and discipline. And I agree with part of what he says. I think it's very true that if we get stuck not only in emptiness, but in any of the Buddha's teachings, if we get stuck in it and we're just thinking about it, we're contemplating it all the time, and we forget how to be nice to people, or we forget how to just live in a healthy, balanced way, then it's not practical. It's not a grounded way of practice. So, for sure, emphasizing giving, loving kindness, and discipline is really important. However, I disagree that it sounds like he's saying people shouldn't learn what is emptiness. And to clarify, in the Theravada tradition, traditionally they don't use the word emptiness that much. They don't talk about emptiness. They usually just use impermanence and selflessness to describe the nature of things. Emptiness is more a Mahayana teaching. So, from the Theravada perspective, emptiness is used to mean something else, different context. So, maybe they asked the wrong person about emptiness. Then again, these days, Theravada, Mahayana, everyone is borrowing teachings from both traditions, and there's much less of this strict divide about what is Theravada, what is Mahayana. Everyone's talking about emptiness, everyone's talking about impermanence and things like that. It's becoming very much mixed. But I disagree that we shouldn't learn about emptiness or that we shouldn't learn about impermanence or selflessness, because actually that's what's guiding our practice. Because just think about it. If we teach practices of giving, practicing discipline, practices of meditation, but we don't have the guiding principle of selflessness or emptiness, what can happen? Without the guiding view that everything is impermanent and empty, without self, what could happen? to our whole direction of practice. Maybe the first thought is, well, nothing. I'd probably be happier because I don't have to think about all these things. They're too complicated. I'd just be meditating happily and being nicer, and it'd be great. But what's the possible danger? Yeah, yeah. What could we imagine as we're practicing these things of kindness, discipline, meditation? What could we imagine that could actually take us very far away from the practice of uh, freeing ourselves from suffering? We could think that, hey, I've been a good person. Um, I should be all good now. I'm all set. But at the same time, just by practicing morality, just by being nice to people, maybe we still suffer a lot because when we're being nice to people, when we're being charitable, we could be really selfishly pushing what we want onto other people. Maybe even trying to force people to study Buddhism. If you just learn Buddhism, you'll be fine. And not accepting that maybe that's not good for the person. Maybe Buddhism is not good for them at this time in their life. Maybe they just need us to listen or to show kindness without expectation of following what we think has to be. It's got to be this way. And from the meditation side of it, if we're not uh, educated or reminded that there's no state of mind or no state of experience that's permanent, then in our meditation, we could be seeking these states, trying to get into states, meditative states, or even if we don't know what enlightenment is, maybe we're trying to find it or trying to see it. And if we didn't have the idea of selflessness, we may be looking for our true self, which basically becomes another religion. It becomes theistic spirituality, looking for some permanent self outside of our body and mind, and thinking that we can see it in meditation. We could achieve it and grasp it in meditation. Then we become intoxicated with the idea of self, or intoxicated with certain meditative states. The idea of emptiness and selflessness reminds us that every single state of mind, of body is empty. It happens, it comes about because of different conditions, and we could enjoy it while it lasts, but if we seek for it, we suffer. If we set our mind on permanence or true self, then we suffer. So actually, I think this monk contradicts the basic premise of the Eightfold Noble Path, which is a Theravada teaching, which is a basic teaching of all Buddhism, right? What's the first item on the Eightfold Noble Path? Yeah, 正见 or right view. What's right view? Well, first of all, right view is knowing that everything is impermanent and selfless, empty. That's right view. It's part of right view. That's the conceptual right view. If we don't have right view, then we don't have the second one. What's the second part of the Eightfold Noble Path? Yeah, right thought, 正思维, which can also be translated as right direction. Only if we have the right view would we have the right direction. If we know that everything is impermanent, then we know not to seek certain states in meditation or not to crave for some external permanence to be happy, right? So we don't go for that. We go the other way. We let go of clinging to things to try to find happiness in things that are empty or impermanent. The whole direction of the practice would be lost without right view, right? So, according to that basic formula of Buddhism, just understanding emptiness, which is not complicated, is part of having the right direction. Emptiness is just that everything is empty of self. Everything is empty of permanence. So everything is impermanent. Everything is conditioned by everything else. That's emptiness. That's not a complicated theory or complicated concept. The practice is then using all of these different methods to observe ourselves and to observe the world and observe when we start to cling or attach to permanence and to self. And the antidote is impermanence, is no self, is emptiness. In the end, even emptiness, we empty out. All these Buddhist concepts, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's just medicine. Once we've taken the medicine, we don't need to keep taking it. So once we experience impermanence and experience selflessness, then our mind is well, is healed. So with this kind of approach, we're much less likely to get caught up in these concepts and feel that Buddhism is so pessimistic. Buddhism is actually life affirming. It's just helping us clear out all of these misperceptions and upside down ways of seeing the world. All these concepts are just clearing out all this stuff from our mind so we could be very simple people and actually enjoy the wonders of life without getting intoxicated by them.